Welcome to Syntax. In this Monday Hasty Treat, we're going to be picking packages. We're going to be talking about how you can pick a JS package and how you should what you should look for in a package and what types of things you might be wanting to pay attention to before you go ahead and NPM install that thing and have the dump truck come up and just dump a whole lot of who knows what in your application. My name is Scott Tolinsky. I'm a developer from Denver. With me as always is Wes Boss. What's up, Wes?
Hey, not too much. I do want to talk about the open source pledge real quick, though. This is a initiative that Sentry is heading up, but what it is if you are a company that uses open source software, it's time for you to pay your share, right? And there's an opensourcepledge.com, and all these really cool companies are pledging per dev how much money they are going to give. So, for example, Sentry give $500,000, which is $3,700 per dev, and there's a huge list of different companies on here. Volt, Git Butler, Valtown, Laravel is on here, StackBlitz. It's really cool to see. And along with this, Sentry has put up some billboards, which with the CEO, the CFO, and the CTO, we'll try to put some images up on the screen of it. But what do they call this? CEO is the Chief Excuse Officer.
Yes.
The CFO is the Chief Freeloading Officer, and the CTO is the Chief Tightwad Officer. And these graphics are amazing. I kind of want a shirt with them on. I'm kind of hoping that they make some of those. But check it out, opensourcepledge.com. Tell your boss to take the pledge.
Okay, so let's talk about the scenario here. What's the scenario? The scenario is you need a library utility. You need to do something in your JavaScript. What you need to tell if a number is even or odd, right? How are you going to do that? That's just a joke, folks. But you need something in your application. How do you determine what is good enough to grace your code base with? What can you add to your code base and not have it potentially be 1, out of date, 2, bad practices, 3, something unnecessary, etc.? How do you pick a library or a package? Where do you even start for that type of thing? What's your strategy, Wes? If you need something, what do you reach for first?
I go through this all the time, which is like, okay, I need a library. For example, the other day I needed a library that did a regex to get all emojis out of it, right? Or you need a library that has a list of all of the countries and their country codes, and then you need a couple of methods for finding those countries based on their country code or getting the emoji flag for that country code, right? These little utilities I find myself needing all of the time. And when that happens, I go to NPM and I search for what I want, and I'm just like, I don't know. There's 20,000 of them on here. I don't know which ones are good. I don't know if they're secure. I don't know if they actually have the features that I want. So I thought, let's talk about our approach to both finding them and as well as evaluating it. Because finding them is half the problem, right? So
finding it
first of
tough.
all, yeah. So what I'll do generally is I'll go to NPM and then realize, the NPM search sucks.
Yes.
And I'll go to Socket.dev. So NPM, when you go to search for a package on NPM, let's do my country one. I'll just search country code on NPM. The first one is intl tell input. And then it gives you these little bars, which is PQM. And I don't know what PQM is, and I don't know if those bars are good. What I do want to know is everything we're going to talk about today to evaluate it. But I want to know, when was it? I guess they do show you when it was last updated, but I want to know, how many people, what's the most popular ones? You can sort by popularity, I guess, but show me, are these getting 100 downloads a month or 300,000 downloads a month? And on top of that, the search is just not very good. So I have switched to using Socket.dev, which is Faraz's company. He does a lot of dependency security things. They'll analyze every single NPM dependency. And if you go and use their search, I find that their search is quite a bit better, as well as it gives you the information about supply chain security. They have a quality metric that they calculate based on a few things. Has it been maintained? What does the license look like? And I just find it to be a little bit better. I still wish that it showed you how many downloads per month, because that's a huge stat for me. But I'll message him. Ask him to add that.
DLPM. I personally, I would use Socket.dev as my second step. I would use Socket.dev to evaluate, to help me evaluate, because it does show you a lot of really good information from maintenance, quality, vulnerabilities, license, supply chain security. Like, it gives you all that stuff. But like, for instance, I just typed in React state into this, and on the first page, Zoostand, then React stately utils, MobX, and then 5 React stately packages, and then Jotai, and then 8 more React stately packages. Actually, 10 more React stately packages. So before we get to like something like XState React, and then 10 more React stately packages. React stately. Why you got so many packages? What's going on there? I don't know anything about React stately, but now I see that there's 10 billion React stately packages. That's wild to me. Either way, it kind of makes it a little hard to get to some things. So here, let me give you an option that you might not consider or have considered before that I've found to be very good for me. Well, at least I'll give you 2 options, one of which that's not as good. I'll go to Reddit and I'll search for stuff on Reddit. People have opinions. People post about it. You see something modern, people will give their direct experiences about it. It's always hit or miss. But here's one that you may not have considered: Perplexity. Perplexity.ai. We've talked about it before, but it's like a AI search engine. They do their best to surface links, but also give you kind of a LLM, you know? And the reason I like Perplexity is tends to be very up to date, and it's good at interpreting language in that sort of way. So for instance, I just said, I need a modern JavaScript library to parse and query a CSV. And then it says, here's Papa Parse. Papa Parse is actively maintained. It has browser and node support. It's fast. It's feature rich. And then, of course, I went to Socket.dev, and I do the same thing. Parse, I want to say CSV. And Papa Parse is the second one there. So then I can take a second look at it. There's another one, CVS Parse. There's Fast CV Parse, whatever. But either way, I found that the Perplexity AI does a good job of finding the things that people are using, because it's kind of like an AI search engine. But it does a largely a good job of being able to understand what people are talking about and using.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I had kind of stopped asking like ChatGPT for these things, because it's still 2021. So a lot of the suggestions are kind of out of date. And I thought I want to know what's happened in the last year or two. What are people using in the last couple of years? So that's a good, because Perplexity also takes search engines into account, right? And it's constantly updating itself.
They'll give you even
it is a search engine.
It is a search engine. They'll give you links to back this stuff up. So it's not just like an LLM spitting out. It's giving you...
Oh, I like that.
Like, here's a blog post. Yeah, JavaScript CSV parser comparison. And so then you can click on that if you want to read more or something like that. So you can get where the LLM is getting its information from.
Yeah. You know what I'll also do when I want to find, like, maybe there's a newer alternative to something? Yes. I'll often just go into Google and just type, like, for example, Moment.js, right? I'll just type Moment.js verse, and then immediately you can say versus date functions, day.js, Luxon, and date, right? So, immediately have 4 other things to do a quick little research into. And then also you can just search that, and you can often find like a Reddit thread or something where somebody's giving their 2 cents on the differences between X and Y.
Yeah. So I went just to also follow up on that. I went to Perplexity and I said, what are Moment.js alternatives? And it says day.js, date.fns, Luxon, temporal API.
That's a good
tip. So it's good. Yeah.
I like that. I'll also often look for like an awesome list. So if you're not aware of this, on GitHub, there's often just a GitHub repo full of awesome dash whatever. So awesome React state management, awesome Node.js queuing alternatives, and they'll list out everything in the world. And it's great to just kind of peruse really quickly, kind of see what the landscape looks like. So big fan of that, as well as I'm a big fan of just asking people, right? go on Twitter, go on Discord, wherever it is that people hang out. People love to give their 2 cents on what is good and what's not good. And also people ping Scott and I all the time about like, hey, what should I use for local first? People ask Scott this all the time because he's had like 8 episodes on it. What should I use for local first data management? And then Scott goes, well,
yeah,
because he's tried them all, right? And he loves to give his opinion on that.
I do. And it's actually so funny. I was just doing my conference talk at Svelte Summit, which was on that very thing. And Swix was in the chat and he was just like, I'm here to find out what the libraries are that I should be paying attention. And because I'm going on and on about, the basics and intros. And then like, as he types that, I go, well, now let's talk about the libraries. It's like perfect timing. I do love to talk about that stuff. You're totally right.
Look in established projects, package.json.
Yep.
Or go to the like dependencies tab on GitHub, and you'll be able to see what dependencies they are using, or often the opposite, which is if you are checking out a package and you say, is anybody using this? You can do the opposite, which is who is using this package? And you can do a quick look at, oh, wow, some very big projects are using this, or I actually want to see how they're using it. And you can dive into the code and see how that works.
All right, let's talk quality now.
Yes.
How do you evaluate the quality of any sort of package? Where oftentimes, I know that people can recommend things or things get used for a long time, but how do we know that, one, that it's being maintained or that people care about it or that the community has vetted it or used it? I know that at this very moment, there's like drama going on because some starter kit developer has been selling a ton of his starter kit and has like really bad security on it. So how do you know that you're not just like you're pulling in stuff with really bad either security or it's out of date or other people aren't using it, it's been abandoned? A good place, and honestly, one thing that I always do with any package before I install it into my application, no matter what, is I go to the GitHub issues. It can save you so much time. For instance, you might see a package that looks really good, you install it, and then you hit a bug right away. Then you go to the GitHub issues, and sure enough, that's like the number one GitHub issue. There's 400 people saying same +1, and you could have avoided that had you looked at that and said, okay, well, there's clearly something going on here, and the creator's not responding to any of these. They're not involved. It hasn't been updated in 6 months, and there's clearly an issue. There might just be a problem with this,
I will almost always go to the GitHub issues and there'll be like is this thing dead, or like what's the status of the project? And if there's a million issues, and this is no shade to the authors of these packages because they owe you nothing, but when you're making your choice, it's kind of important. So sometimes you'll find somebody who makes a post and says, hey, this thing hasn't been updated in 3 years. So for example, I use a package called HTML to Canvas. And what that allows you to do is to lay things out with HTML and then essentially take a screenshot and convert it to like a JPEG. And I use that for my video overlays. I have a couple tools I've built on it and my background patterns for my videos. And I was hitting like an issue with it. So I went to the issues, and then somebody had an issue that says, what are you using instead of this package? And then there was a couple of really good suggestions, including one guy who forked it and was now fixing bugs and adding features to it. So I was able to find a really good one. Whereas like I would never have found that thing if it wasn't for the GitHub issues, because like that's not going to come up in search. There's not going to be a dev.to article on the top HTML to Canvas libraries,
Yeah. Here's another one. And this one always gets me a little bit annoyed, at least now. I'm become that guy if a package doesn't have types installed. I have to do the install them from directly typed or whatever. Man, that's just kind of annoying. Definitely directly typed. Yeah. That to me is like something that is annoying. But as long as there's types that do exist for it, I will use it. Definitely type shows that people care about the package if it's not like from the creators directly. But if your package doesn't have types created for it, and then what do I got to do? I got to cast everything as any, or I have to, make the whole package as any. That makes working with it a little frustrating.
Not having types is a major flag to me, because it means, and not that the author has to use TypeScript, but it means that nobody in the community has also needed types for it and stepped in and created a definitely typed repo for it. So Every now and then there's like kind of if it's so small that like nobody has done it, almost always you could just go to the GitHub, copy paste the actual utility yourself and put it in your own, put it in a file yourself. You don't need to install it, create a dependency.
Yeah, sometimes I'll do that directly if it's especially if it's a single function or anything.
So Socket.dev gives you metrics on if it thinks it's a good package or not. And that will give you supply chain security. So its dependencies, what do those look like, right? And it'll give you a quality score. It gives you a maintenance score, which is not always amazing because some packages literally don't need to be maintained. They are so simple that that's it. They're done, But others, they need to be updated and whatnot. So I'm sure they take GitHub issues and whatnot into account as well. And they'll also look into the license, which is kind of interesting because if you have lawyers at your company and you use the package and then, oh shoot, there is no license for this type of thing. I've had stuff in the past where I open sourced it and someone is like, hey Wes, like you need to put a license on this thing. Otherwise I can't use it at my company. And like, I forgot about that. So pop it in there.
Yeah, totally. Next one here is Bundlephobia. If you haven't seen this site, it tells you a lot about packages size. So like, for instance, I have a link to Zoostand's version 5, and you can see that the current version of Zoostand is 1.2 kilobytes, and then it's 588 bytes minified and gzipped. And I love that they give you the minified and gzipped value of that, because that's really what you'll end up shipping at the end of the day, or at least you should. And then it tells you directly how long of a download it'll take on 3G. So this package, if you add this to your application, it is adding 1 millisecond of 4G download to your bundle. I also love that it shows how it's changed over time.
Yeah, that's cool.
You can see some packages really bloat over time, but from version 4 to version 5, Zoostand was like a third. It was like cut in a third. So it's like now a third of the size it once was. So you can tell that they're actively trying to make this thing better. And I do love that.
Another one is check if it does what you want before you get into it. I can't tell you how many times I've integrated a package into something and I realized, oh shoot, it doesn't cover this use case. And then you have that code throughout your code base. It's in your package.json. You got to uninstall it, and that's a pain in the butt. So what I've ended up doing is read through the docs, make sure it actually covers your use cases that you can think of, and then also just run like a quick like isolated example in just an HTML file. Link the thing in via esm.sh. Try run a little example before you go ahead and spend the time to integrate it into your application, because you could save yourself quite a bit of time. And even another tip I have is simply go to github.com/search. Search for that package's name and find examples that are already running that use that, and see if you can get it up and running really quickly, because you can see where people are actually using it.
Do you know an easy way to do that, Wes?
How?
So let's say you have a package like Zoostand, right? I'm using Zoostand just because we were talking about it moments ago. And if you go to Insights, there's a tab in GitHub Insights.
Yes.
And from Insights, you can see, so you click on Dependency Graph, and then you can click on Dependents, and you can see all of the repos that are using this package on GitHub. So sometimes if I'm having a package that has really bad docs, or I'm hitting an issue with it, I will go to the Insights, Dependency Graph, Dependents, and then I will check to see somebody else's code just to get through that bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have used that. That's how I kind of suss out are people using it, right? 504,000 repositories on GitHub are using Zoostand, right? It checks out,
Yeah,
but
right.
if you want to see how are people using this, like what does the code look like, I'll often use GitHub search I want to actually see the part of the code where they are using this. Yeah.
What I would do is I would just click through the repo from the network dependence and then search from there, so that I know.
Yeah,
this,
but then you're doing it repo by repo. GitHub search, I can search from HTML to Canvas, and immediately I can see 20 different code on one page of people actually using it, and you can immediately see how are people actually using it. There's two different ways to do it, but
My way.
It really depends on what you're looking Yeah.
No, I actually think your way is
clicking
better.
it one by one,
Yeah.
searching for it, or my way, typing it in once and seeing 20 examples on one page.
Yeah.
Both
Well,
good
my
ways.
way's better because I did it. Yeah, that's why.
No, but also my way is just like a fuzzy search, Yours is actual, like using the dependency tree to look that up.
Yeah. Here's one more thing I would do. I would look at the package.json file, because you can see the size on Bundlephobia, and that might give you an idea about how big something is. But you got to know what the thing you're bringing into your code base is bringing into your code base. And sometimes that thing has a dependency, that thing has a dependency, whatever. I think you can suss a lot of this out just by looking at the Bundlephobia and seeing how big it is. But there is something to be said about packages that rely on things that rely on less dependencies or whatever. I mean, granted, there is an argument against that as well. But if something is relying on something else, then there's more likely something to break down the line. Something's version gets updated and then the dependency doesn't get updated, and then
or there's no option to pass like a option to the underlying package. Right. Sometimes you just look at it and go, oh, I should just be using that dependency directly, and I can code this 100 lines myself, and that way I have full control over it, and it's one less dependency in your package JSON.
Word.
So I think we've done a show on that before, like when to buy versus when to build it yourself, or like when to install versus build it yourself. That's a whole decision you need to make as well. Is this worth bringing in an extra dependency? But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about you do need a package, and how do you suss that out?
Word.
I think that's it. I think that's good info. Please tweet us at SyntaxFM with your thoughts as to how do you suss out if a package is good or not. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yes, absolutely.
Peace.